Welcome to the Chimney and Fireplace Success Network, a weekly broadcast sponsored by CVC Coaching, hosted each week by industry speaker, coach, author, and educator Jerry Eisenhower. Our presentations are produced to assist business owners and managers in turning their business dreams into their business realities. And now, here's your host, Jerry Eisenhower.
Hey, I want to welcome you once again to the Chimney and Fireplace Success Network. We produce this show every week, and it's a production of CVC Coaching. And my name is Jerry Eisenhower, and it's an honor and it's a pleasure to have you along with us. But we're recording this week's session right after we returned from the National Chimney Sweep Guild Convention. And just 2 weeks before that, we had actually exhibited at another trade show in Pennsylvania, and during that time also traveled around and visited with a lot of clients over the last couple of months doing SWAT meetings. But anyway, during this time, I've made a very interesting observation, and during the recent show, I actually shared it with my guest today. So I've invited Tom Urban. We've taught a lot of classes together. We've done a lot of things together. I actually got known one time for doing the Tom and Jerry show, and I never figured out why he always got top billing, but he did. But anyway, so Tom, you out there with me today? You ready to go, brother?
I'm all ready to go, Jerry.
Okay, bro. So anyway, here's the question. Here's what we're seeing. Here's what we're seeing, and I want to know if you're seeing this. And what it's all about education. And these are the things that Tom and I, who have taught classes together for a number of years in the industry, are seeing. There's two times that it appears that people are interested in furthering their education. One is when they're en route and studying and hoping to pass a certified chimney sweep examination. And the other time is when it's time to recertify and they are looking for CEUs. And the forethought in the process that Tom and I have been discussing is this the two reasons that we're looking at education? Is this why people start striving to go to a higher level? Is CEUs the driving force? Is certification to get the initial certification, is that the driving force? And shouldn't the driving force be other things? So, Tom, what do you think about this question we've discussed privately, and now we're going on an open forum with it?
Yeah, Jerry, it's something that we started to notice about 3 to 4 years ago. And it really had to do with the fact of all the, actually through the maturation process of this industry, it became really apparent that the drive and the attention or focal perspective had changed. And in the early days, it happened to be where we were, all basically single man or 1 or 2 man operations. And we had the perspective of trying to learn. We basically felt the premise was the more that we could learn about our industry and what was going on, the better that we could serve our customer. And that worked for a good number of years. But now the emphasis has changed, and good or bad, as industries begin to grow, companies get larger, employees become a part of our lives. That motivator has changed to, I think for the most part, is making sure that our employees are educated and taken care of. And basically, it's a least effective thing, and I shouldn't say least effective, but at least way of complying with what we have to do. So there has been a big change in that, Jerry. There has.
Yeah, I even posed this to some of my coaches, people I go to, like Larry Winget, Randy Pennington, Scott McCain. And I wrote this the other day to them, question to Larry, Randy, and Scott. It involves a problem that many business owners in their businesses today face, and one that does not seem to have an easy answer. And that is the education of their workforces. Every company wants higher profits. We all want less waste. We all want more sales, and we all want fewer callbacks. Well, these are going to roll back, of course, to the culture, and where the culture of the company is one that stresses continuing education. And there's that big buzzword we've been hearing for the last couple of years of culture. But is this a goal that requires carrots to get their workforce to understand and to buy into? Or is it a situation where forced compliance is the answer? You know, we see a following where there's a need to take classes or courses to get certified. They are on to this part, but once the goal is reached, they are not moving to a higher level. Likewise, in the world I work in, there are certifications that require continuing education credits to obtain the recertification, or they will have to retest. And this will usually also involve a review test prior to the actual test session. So the thought process I'm looking for is the thought process to share with business owners how to get their people brought into continuing education, which is now more readily available than ever. When in a group setting, the business owners buy into this. In SWATs, the whole team sees it. Now the question is, how do we get this to stick? So Tom, that's the question. What's your thoughts on this?
I guess it really comes down to, Gary, is the amount of time and effort. Realize, let's go back a little bit. In the early days, you know, you went out in the field, you talked to your customer a little, you know, some, and then you figured out what was going on. You told them what was happening, and then you hopefully came to some solution that required some repair and some upgrades to their system. Now there's more traffic on the roads. There's communications. There's social media. There's a variety of different ways and hosts for us to gather information. To the point is the glut. And I stop and think about what a technician has to do out in the field today, and what information he has to collect, and if he's given the right information, and he's also expected to, you know, show some type of a profit to the company. So that becomes a mainstay, and it's new. And how do we get people to start looking at education properly? I guess is we have to go back to the age-old question: is what is everybody's intent?
Yep. What's their intent? You know, and when I said this was Larry Wingett's first answer that came back. You can make people do what you want with either the carrot or the stick. The problem is that the stick has to get bigger and the carrot has to get sweeter. But both of these only produce short-term results. People ultimately do what they want to do and not what you want them to do. And people will do what they want when they feel there's a reason or benefit for them to do it. I'm all for creating short-term results, and I believe in both the carrot and the stick. But long-term change happens when people see the benefit to them. When people see and feel the positive results of having more education, then they will be eager to get more education. And I think there was a lot of wisdom in that. What do you think?
I did read that last night, Jerry, and I was impressed. And I agree with Larry Wingett a lot on what he had to say, and going back to 10. But here was an interesting question, and what Larry said, I'm going to put it to a real life scenario. It happened at the last meeting in Portland, where things got a little tense and whatnot as the beginning of the meeting went on. And Jasper Drangler said the answer, and I don't think he really knew what he said. He basically said there's 700 people in this room and everybody thinks about sweeping chimneys differently. And that is a problem. I think the biggest thing that we have to understand, and I've been in board meetings and I've sat there and I've asked the same question, is like, don't we have a certification of rules, but if we don't come up with an essential uniform platform for us to work off of, then it makes it difficult for us. You do want to go into a more freer based application, then it becomes chaotic. And I think right now we're just kind of running through that process of chaos. And if we get through the chaos, then what Larry says is true, then people will see the need. The other concern that goes back with it is, and I think this is a mistake that's happened through all these years, and again, it was the same thing. I think CSIA and NCSG might have forgot who their customer was. And I think we need to go back and reevaluate that a little bit. There are some people, you know, I know you and I know I spend most of my time with startups, so I pretty much see myself as an elementary school teacher. My job to make sure they get the right equipment, get them set up, and answer their questions and take care of it. Your job may be later on to be the high school teacher that teaches them what they need to do. And maybe the other courses that are offered might be at the college level to go on with that. But sometimes if we don't do a good job at the elementary school level, then by the time they hit high school, or college, they just aren't going to listen.
Yeah, they're not. And, and then Randy gave an answer that also says a lot. And Randy is probably one of the best culture guys I've ever known. And his words were, moving to a culture that values continuing education is difficult in many industries. One approach I have used is to make education the tool, not the goal. Every business is uniquely situated to deliver the exact results they're delivering today. The results won't improve until the people improve. And that won't happen until they learn more and execute better. And he ended by saying, does that make sense? And I think it does
Yeah.
make sense because that's what the part is. Education is a tool. Education is a tool that's going to bring you the things in life you're looking for. Education is going to be able to make you a better communicator with your fellow human being. It's going to make you a better ability to diagnose and those type of things. I mean, Tom, do you remember the days when no one scanned every chimney?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, it's I'll share this one with you. Just the other day, I was thinking about our days when when I was called the Chim Scam Man, where I was scamming everybody, and kind of show you how full circle it's come. The other day, we took an order from a gentleman who's just starting his business, and his words to my daughter when he ordered the unit is, "I am not going to start this business until I have a camera ready for my first customer."
Right. And that's what we used to talk about, Tom. We used to
Yeah.
talk about that the scan, the interior video inspection system, it was a tool, the same as a screwdriver, a flashlight, or anything else. No offense against you, it's not a super special tool. It's another tool that's in your arsenal of success. Now, does it do special things? Yes. But what we're seeing is, and I hope this doesn't hit people wrong, but it's viewed more as a sales tool. And years ago, we were teaching it from a documentation and inspection viewpoint. And now it's viewed as, well, hey, that's how you're going to sell more jobs. Is the focus on sales, and now being a sales coach, maybe that's not a good question for me to say, but it's part of it is that the focus has switched over to sales. Do you think that might be part of the issue?
It could be part of it, Jerry. I think that I know my attitude's changed toward inspections. That it's if we're gonna if you're gonna have to make people do inspections, if you want people to be educated, then obviously they need something to fuel it, and obviously sales are it. Sales aren't a bad thing. Sales are a good thing. But I think again it goes back to the intent of what you're doing. Is that do you put the camera up there to find a crack and then basically I got a liner job? Or is the process to go up there, do you fully assess the chimney and its ability to work properly? And by the way, here are some defects that are diminishing its ability to do that. How would you like to address that? Different. I mean, same thing. We're all going for sales, but my intention is to make my customer aware that there are some defects and they need something to be done.
Right.
Versus kind of going up with the camera and just saying, "Yup, you got a cracked liner. You're out of business and you need a liner." I guess the end result is the same. Just seems like the first one seems a little bit more has options for the customer and more objectivity toward versus kind of knocking them over the head and bringing them home.
Yeah, and that's what I see from my end. Now, Randy asked me a question next, and it was, Jerry, who is this message trying to be conceived for, owners or their employees? And my answer was, actually, it's both, because you've got to get both bought into this principle. The owners have to be bought into it, and then through leadership, they're going to reinforce it to their people. In fact, one of the things that I wrote later was that one of the most notable quotes from President Dwight D. Eisenhower was that true leadership was when you could get people to want to do something, not make them do something. But Randy replied with the following: the position to the owner is that continuing to expand knowledge and skills is crucial to remain competitive. Certification isn't a point of difference if everyone's certified. Your company has to continue to learn and master new skills to remain relevant and growing. My message to employees will be similar with a twist. The smaller piece is that certification only means that you have mastered the basics. For the company to succeed, everyone must continuously learn and apply new concepts and skills. The point of difference is that we look at certification as the baseline. The twist is that we expect our employees to continue to be better tomorrow than they are today. Those that do so will reap the rewards of more opportunity and the right to be compensated above the minimum. Those that don't will find their options limited. And I thought that was an excellent answer also in this discussion. What do you think?
I think it's really good. Yeah, I think it's a really good one. Let me put this back as something that was told to me years ago, and you would agree, and I think it goes along with what Randy just said to you. If we were to paint a bullseye, I asked a president of not a president, actually, an executive director at one time, I said, if I was to paint a bullseye, where would you put CSA certification? And he said, oh, I put it right in the center. And I go, really? He goes, yeah. He says, that's the only place it needs to be. And I said, if it's our basis, if it's our standard of care is there, and if we're going to grow, where do we grow if it's already in the center? I said, to me personally, it's on the outside. In other words, that gets you to the circle. After that, what you're saying, the continuing education, the experiences, the culture that we want to create gets us closest to a center. I think that's a better approach.
It is. But, there was a lot of wisdom there, and I think that's what we're missing. One is, I think he hit the nail on the head. Certification is a minimum standard of education. It's not saying that you are expert, and I hope this doesn't upset anyone, but there's a lot to learn past that point. You got to learn about pressures. It's often when I'm doing a class, I'm telling them a chimney sweep today, a technician, he's got to be a chemist. He's got to be a pressure expert. He's got to be a weatherization expert. He's got to understand airflow, barometric pressures, humidity levels, and all that affects it. In venting systems today, we're dealing with cooler temperatures. We're dealing with chimneys that are struggling to do their job and with less available air in the home. Now, you can look at these as problems, but to me, these are all phenomenal opportunities.
Well, along with the pressure side of things, Jerry, you've also have I'm going to call it tradecraft for not a better reason, but there's a plethora of product out there that can be used that just wasn't available to us back in the early 80s that they have out there now. There's, just the ability to know what product goes where and what's going to do the best for it. That in itself is, and learn how to put and place a product in place properly. That's a big deal too. So, like you're right. There's a lot of hats that these guys have to wear.
So saith the man that in the 1970s had to make his own stainless steel pipe because there was no stainless steel pipe for relining. Would that be accurate to describe you, Tom?
Yes, that would be very accurate to describe.
Right.
And then in the early 1980s, the guy who came up with insulations because his vermiculite was running out on him.
Correct.
Yeah, mother of necessity.
It's kind of like, it's almost funny, we look at it, and often if you survey today's social discussions on Facebook, and you will see the major alarm go out because, my God, I've encountered an insert that simply slid in. And my answer is, welcome to 1983, guys. In fact, I was doing an article last night. Dave Hanna has asked me to do a background article on the history of Chimney Check, which was in 2 phases, which was a public relations campaign done in the 90s in 2 different phases, one with television and radio PSAs where we had Dick Van Dyke, and then the magazine and newspaper PSAs that followed a couple weeks later. You remember that meeting in Portland, or I'm not sure where it was, but we had the 2 actors busted into the door at lunch, and it was all about the Chimney Check program. Do you remember that?
I vaguely do.
You vaguely do. Okay, well, I remember it because they came busting in, and they were dressed as the Blues Brothers, and it was all about, and they were screaming for, I think her name was Arlene, and she was the public relations person, and we were introducing phase 2 of Chimney Check. But we staged this with these actors ran in, running around, and it was all about building public relations for the chimney sweep industry. But as you look at it, like I said, there's been vast changes. And when you look at it, I can remember, let me ask a question, Tom. When you first got certified, you probably had the same training manual that I did, which was 200 questions. What did you have when you first took your first certification test?
Let's see, I think that was in 1981. There was a book of questions, and we had to, I think the source book we used was Jay Sheldon's book about wood heat safety, and the two of them, and yeah, it was just, there was questions, and then there was questions, and basically we had to go research it back up and find it in the wood heat safety book that Jay Sheldon had written.
Right. But you remember 1986, that was the year we debuted successful chimney sweeping. And it was
Oh yeah,
it
yeah.
was all because of the work Marianne Buffet, Dave Johnson, and every member of the technical committee. Every one of you guys wrote a chapter, if I remember correctly. That's how the first successful chimney sweeping manual was written.
Yep, that's right.
You remember what chapter you wrote by chance? Because I'm pretty sure you were involved.
I was, I think later on the rewrites, I don't remember the initial first ones, but it was small. But I do remember going back and writing the inspection part of it later, like in the late 90s or something. When there was a rewrite, I did that one.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing I know.
Chapter 12 or chapter 10 or something like that.
Yeah. Here's the thing I know. Every business owner I talk to is looking for certain things. Tell me if you find there's any disagreement with the things I'm going to tell you that I see as major goals. Number one, every business owner wants higher profits. Would you agree with that?
That's usually the age-old question.
Right. Every business owner wants more sales. Would you agree with that?
Yep.
Every business owner wants to reduce his callbacks. Would you agree?
Most definitely.
Every business owner wants less problem calls coming to his phone every day. Would you agree?
Yes, he would.
He wants his jobs to go smoothly, be properly estimated with the proper materials, and not run into problems when he's doing repairs. Would you agree with that statement?
Yes.
Okay, so to accomplish all of those goals, it takes a couple things. But one of the major ones, deep down inside, is a highly trained and skilled workforce. Would you agree with that?
Partially.
It's going to
And the
take
reason
more.
I say partially,
Go ahead.
what's that?
Go ahead.
I think that, no, I think what you have to, yeah, it takes an educated workforce, absolutely. But one of the key factors that's missing in a way, Jerry, is the fact that the information that has collected in the field has to be uniform. And if it's uniform, then you can come up with a uniform response for it. If you have a uniform response for it, then you can address things with customers and clients and training so that everybody stays on the same page. If you don't come up with the same process, then it gets really difficult to try to hand this in. And a lot of people, this is where I think a lot of people are at right now. They don't have a good process of collecting field information and a good process to work with it to become profitable and to really, really help the customer get to an end goal.
Correct. But I've got several presentations I do that involve three words. And one of them is what I feel, and this is based on my experience and my training and my coaching and everything else. But these are three words that every successful business has got to have, or they're going to falter. And that is leadership, culture, and systems. Now, inside of those three words, everything you just said is in those three words. Would you agree?
Yes, it is, Jerry. Yes, you have to have a system.
Correct. And then there's three additional words I consider for success in life, in business, in family, and I teach these three words also. And these three words are communication, understanding, and action. Okay, and I'm going to get you from there. Communication is being able to communicate with other people, listening to what they say, and being able to speak to them. Those come with education, those come with maturity. That's where that comes from. Would you agree?
Yeah, it does, Jerry.
I mean, if
It's
you
time out in the field.
right, that's it. You find it out from experience. It's a maturity when you go through people. I mean, sometimes when you look back, sometimes it scares me some of the things that we used to do in the field that we thought were right. Do you agree with that?
Hmm.
I would.
Yeah.
We didn't know no better. Okay. I've often told people about lining the first chimney I ever relined with 28 gauge blue steel stovepipe. We didn't know no better. There was nothing telling us that was an undiscussed subject. We look at water entry issues. Water entry issues. Every chimney sweep in America carried a bucket of roofing tar back in the 80s, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
And we didn't hear it. Nobody was parging smoke chambers. I mean, that didn't come in until the 90s. Or the use of the wrong mortars and studies of lime mortars and all. But see, that's what's happened. Our industry, in the 40 years since it was reinvented in the 70s due to an energy crisis, has been under a constant change. And this change is speeding up due to technology.
It has.
It is. I mean, it's like
Well, it's a maturity of the entire industry too, Jerry. I mean, that's the good part about it. I
right.
mean, yeah, like you said, everybody carried a bucket of tar in their truck, and and counter flashing will sound like an action hero. We didn't know who it was.
Well, yeah.
It finally took us a while to understand that. So
Yeah,
yeah.
we used to get paint sticks a dozen times to smear the roofing tar. That's what we
Hmm.
did. That was
Yep.
standard of care. Nobody knew no
Yep.
different. And I can, how many chimneys that we see that were leaking water, we had no idea because we didn't concern ourselves with leaking water in those days unless it fell in the floor. Now
That's about it.
we have a focus, and now when I look at classes, I'm teaching about, the pH of the water, the size of the aggregate, the makeup, the type of mortar, the analyzation. Do you remember when Bill Payton started talking about cutting out samples of stainless steel and having them analyzed to see if they were actually 316 or 304? Do you remember those discussions?
I used to be there, and I was the guy who used to flip his overhead slides for him. Yes, I do remember the
No,
intergranular corrosion and that
right.
stuff.
But at the same time, I wasn't ready to hear that at that point. I
Right.
mean, seriously, in the 80s, it's just something I would sit through a Bill Payton seminar like, good God, this guy's above my head. But later on, as you go into it, but see, this is one of the problems, Tom. You and I, no offense against us, but we're not young bucks no more, are we?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay, so you and I had an advantage. You and I were able to get educated in little bitty bits and pieces over a course of 40 years. And I think that
Yeah.
you and I recognize every time that you and I talk, we're talking about new stuff today that we're learning. And that's after all these years. So part of it is today's younger entry into the industry, he's got a lot more work to do right from the beginning.
He does. Yeah, he has more knowledge. Actually, that's one of the key factors when you run a week-long program, it's like, what do you teach? Because there is so much, and after a while, it's like drinking from the fire hose.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you go in, it's like, and as an instructor, it's like, how much can I release? How much can I say before I've overloaded? I mean, I've been in front of classes and all of a sudden I watch the eyes glaze over. Now, sometimes because they can't understand my words for some reason, such as I can remember when you and I used to do classes. You remember when you used to sell the sizzle instead of when you sell the sizzle instead of the steak, Tom? Do you remember that?
I don't know how many people I had to tell that a Pontiac was a Pontiac, but yeah, I got it.
Yeah. Why? Because that was one of the things I used to say. What did Pontiac sell? And people, they didn't get it because they didn't understand what Pontiac was, and it was a brand of car back in those days. And what did Pontiac sell? Pontiac sold excitement. They didn't sell cars. That was their brand. So, Tom, let's kind of summarize this discussion. What do we tell people how to get past this? Because I feel like we're at a turning point in this industry, and technology is going to make this happen more rapidly. And if you look at the history of chimney sweeping, technology killed this industry in the 19th century and it went away. That technology was called central heat because before the advent of central heat, we had chimney sweeps all across America, but they went away. And they reinvented in the 1970s because all of a sudden we had the OPEC nations that were holding us hostage and people went back to burning wood. And a lady by the name of Eva Horton remembered her childhood in Norway and started talking about chimney sweeps, and hence the reinvention of chimney sweeping in America and the National Chimney Sweep Guild, and the world goes on from there. So, what advice does an old sage like Tom Urban give the people that's listening to us?
Well, thank you for the old sage.
Well, you gotta be honest, Tom.
I'm, I'm working with it, Jer. Every day I work with it.
Just so you guys know how old Tom is. See, I don't even know if this still exists, but Tom and Esther were members of the Peace Corps. And I don't even know if the Peace Corps is still in existence today. But in the 60s and 70s, the Peace Corps was a pretty big thing in America.
It was a big thing. The lessons I think that need to go is I think people need to just take a step back for a second to figure out what it is that they really want. But I think a lot of it has to do with the fact of being able to uniform your process, because without uniform your process, there's a slide I have in a presentation I do, and it's pretty much goes this way. Every job that a guy goes out, or a guy or a woman goes out and looks at on the job, it's always different. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, but do you see the same things in different jobs?
Yes.
That's what you got to understand. You have to understand that you're seeing the same things. So if you are seeing the same things, then you need to create and build a system. You talk about it as an SOP. I work with it with checklists. You come through that, so you get to that point of being able to uniform that. Because once the message becomes uniform, I think you have the ability to create that culture that people are looking for. You know, the code, and then people will pick up on it, and I think the buy-in will be better. It's interesting when you talk to some people about checklists that, oh, you can just get monkeys to go out and to go do the checklist. Well, not really, because the checklist takes the burden off of you, puts it back in where it needs to be, and the person's character and their ability to communicate, like you talked about before, with the customer becomes the most important part. Instead of, worrying about the liner job or worrying about this, the money will come. People need to understand is that through education, and through communication, the work will come. Get that system going better than trying to go out and hammer people with things they may or may not need.
Yeah. Everybody listening to this wants to be more successful. So what you got to do, in my opinion, you got to drill back down to the basics. And I think Tom has hit a key thought process here when he talks about checklists. This is a lot of things when you look at lean management, lean manufacturing, lean operations. It depends on checklists. It depends on things that you don't think about. And see, part of the problem is a lot of times we get so used to what's around us, we don't see it. Tom, do you remember when you told me that it was like a light bulb went off when Dave Pomeroy told you need to put a screwdriver in a certain place?
Yeah, it was. I think for us, the real learning experience when we had Dave come and help us work on lean, oh gosh, back in 2008 or 2009, was the fact of the stream process. In other words, and that's where, as a matter of fact, we're going to do this now. We have our new building. We're going to do it again because we want to reestablish our operation. And one of those things is basically called a stream, where you could take a Post-it note and stick it on the board if you want to. With Dave, we did it with 3x5 file cards. And what operation? You do this operation, lay it on a table, do this and do that. And then you look at the operation. And it was amazing. We found out we now had an operation that took, probably 10 by 10 square feet of, like 100 square feet of area. And now it's down into a file cabinet, another one probably within 10 or 15 square feet. And it was just amazing how we just realized that we could do that. And yes, that screwdriver's in there, and yes, that wrench is in there, and all those things are in that cabinet just to build a rod. But it was amazing that we didn't see it until we actually streamed it out with file cards, what we had to do and what next. And then what tool did you need? And then you lay it down. And sometimes you might want to color the cards, for tools that you need or operators that you want. Use multicolored cards if you want to. But you got to have a big table, and you need and a whiteboard really helps in that process too, to help you get it all together.
Yep. One of the things that, as you were saying what you just said, that came to my mind was in Dr. John Maxwell's 21 Laws of Leadership. And one of the laws of leadership is what he calls the law of the lid. And in the law of the lid, Dr. Maxwell talked about the McDonald brothers and Ray Kroc, and how the McDonald brothers had a lid that would not allow them to go further. In other words, they were super successful. Now, in order to illustrate this further, I really didn't get the depth of this till I watched the movie The Founder, which is the story of Ray Kroc. Because in the movie The Founder, it's all about how Ray Kroc has stumbled across the McDonald brothers because they ordered the biggest number of milkshake machines he ever sold in his life, and he went to California to see what in the world they were doing that they needed all those mix masters. So when he got out there, he saw an operation that made 4 products. They had hamburgers, French fries, soft drinks, and milkshakes. But their goal was to deliver a hamburger to the customer from the time of order in 30 seconds or less. Now, McDonald's can't do that anymore. Have you seen this? You're not going to get a McDonald's burger in 30 seconds or less. Now, how did they do this? That was the interesting part. Because Dick and Maurice, the McDonald brothers, had designed what was they called the speedy food system. And what they did is they went, and it takes light of what you just said, but they did this in full scale. They went to a tennis court. It might have been a basketball court, and they drew off the kitchen, life size.
Yeah.
And then they had their workers go in there and pretend to make the stuff. And they measured them and seen who was tripping over each other, who needed to move this to there. And if you look at McDonald's or any fast food restaurant, it's like you look at how they apply the condiments. You're going to get a certain amount of mustard, a certain amount of ketchup. So what they did, they invented the mechanisms to deliver that exact amount. It's like if you go to a Taco Bell, they got a ground beef scooper that's going to scoop exactly the right amount every time. Because if you wasted 1/10 of an ounce of ground beef, that's a lot of ground beef at the end of the year, and that could kill the profit for the company. So you look at those kind of things, and I think that's what we got to look at. A lot of times we look at tooling, we look at what's the latest and greatest. Sometimes that's a shiny tool syndrome. Okay, sometimes it is. Sometimes you do need the latest and greatest, but the thing is, to have a tool that does the job effectively and efficiently. And see, that's what you've done in your cameras, Tom. You have continuously evolved to a lighter weight, more user-friendly, more replicatable product than you had, correct?
Yeah, we have. We worked the last 4 years, been real tough with doing that.
Correct. At one time, Chim scans were custom built, right?
Yep.
I mean, basically that was it. So every time you turn around, you made a little change in it. And so, and that was your nature, but now you found out that to serve your customer, you had to do certain things that involved change. And some of these weren't easy, were they?
No, when it involves a change, it definitely wasn't an easy process. And it really had to come down to that we realized that very quickly, 4 or 5 years ago, that as companies were growing, that owners weren't the ones running the cameras, that it's going to be employees who may or may not have any experience around tooling or whatever. So we saw a lot of things were were kind of busted up and broke up, and every time they'd break something, like bring it back and look at it and say, how do you do that? And then he would finally figure, and it's amazing what you can, we did a lot of what you call forensic work when units came back and looked at what they broke and how they broke it. And, maybe sometimes they tell you what they thought they did, and in reality it was something else that caused the breakage. But we went through every one of those things, and I think probably we have dramatically reduced repairs and care. And it's really cool. I just heard something on the web the other day. A gentleman had his chim scan over 1,000 chimneys, and it's been 3 years running, and it hasn't been back here for repair. That means the success story is what we put, the effort and time we put into it, is now it's turning around, and our customers are seeing the benefits from it.
Right. So that kind of goes down to my point of view on, everything in this world. Do you want to keep going through the pain that you're presently going through to avoid going through the pain of change? Because actually, when you get through the pain of change, life will get easier. But you got to face this. Sometimes it's time to change. Now, so here's, if you're listening to this, maybe you were in Portland, Oregon last week, but was the education given to your team members? When you go to classes, are they getting it? Are they getting the information? So what you've got to do, and in today's world, now there are ways for you to bring this education in that your people can access it from many different sources. We're one of them, but we're not the only one. So,
Right.
is it
Again, like I said, yeah, Jerry, when it goes with that, I guess I'm going to repeat that. It's that both the organizations, you need to go back, and they need to understand who their customer is. And I think that will help. I mean, and, you got to stare. And interesting is we all look at some of the problems that we've created. Sometimes reflection doesn't go very far. And that, like you said, that's the part of change that all of us have to go through, is you got to look at yourself in a different way and say, man, that's not exactly, we have this problem? Then it's like, remember that's a reflection off of you, and you go, okay, am I going to make some changes? I think that's a key point. I think that we need to understand is that as far as the two organizations need to understand their customer, who they are, and how can we help the customer.
That's it. One of the ways that this was a significant way. I was very lucky. I live in the state of North Carolina, and that makes you lucky to start with. But there was another reason. Whenever I was beginning in this industry, we had a very strong state organization, and we put on very intense training sessions every quarter, every 90 days, somewhere in the state. We would have a 2-day seminar. But on top of that, we would start on Friday. We do Saturday. We did charity work. We lined chimneys for people. God, I just remember some of the places being and doing this. But then there was another feature of that, Tom. Do you remember, Tom, what we called the Hang Tight Club?
Man, I was hoping you'd bring that up.
Seriously, do you remember? Because when you came to North Carolina the first time, you got inducted into what we call the Hang Tight Club. So what the Hang Tight Club was, it wasn't an exclusive club. Anybody could join it. But this was where we didn't get no sleep. We would sit up at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and we were talking about all the mess ups, all the mistakes, and all the things that we learned. And we had some real innovative people here that came up. We had people like Roger Gessner, who was sandblasting smoke chambers in the 1980s. Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
You remember the sandblasting discussions down here, Tom?
I remember the sandblasting discussions and the blue tubing that they use for relining or doing cast in place liners that got overpressurized and creating howitzers in people's houses. Oh my God. The stories went on and on and on.
Those were Goodyear drain tubes, but they made excellent formers for cast in place liners. And rotary cleaning and glaze removal tools. And it's like every meeting, we used to call him the wizard. Pete Luter had something new every time you turn around. He was making something new. He was making his own vacuum. He made his own power vac, brought it in one time. and he named it. It was
Yeah.
like weird, but he spelled suck backwards. It was a
Yeah.
KCUS power vac, and he made this out of a material handling fan and electric and a small gas motor. In fact, that thing last time it was when I visited Emily, it was still sitting there. Believe it or not, Tom had rusted apart. It was sitting out behind their house. And when I
Is it
saw,
really? I remember working with it.
yeah,
Oh my God.
but it was a material handling
Wow.
fan because it was all about he wanted to figure out a way to remove insulation. So him and Roger Gessner, they
Yeah.
came up with and found a material handling fan, and you look at it, and this is how so much of this stuff was invented. And it was actually back in those days, no offense against today, but it was a brotherhood. It was a people helping people. It was like, if somebody was down, other people chipped in. I remember one time that we had a member that was hurt. His name was Danny Yurdy. He got injured. And a whole pile of us showed up on the weekend and added on his house. Man, I had never
Mhm.
framed a house before, but a whole bunch of chimney sweeps went up to Rutherford, North Carolina. We framed a house that weekend. But here's the whole
That
thing.
was a great group.
It was. But here's where it goes down to. It goes down to that in today's world, if you want to reach those goals, you want to be more successful, and you want more profit, and you want higher sales, and you want less callbacks, and you want less waste. This is going to happen through the following means. Number one, you're going to have to be a leader. Number two, you're going to have to develop this culture to where people want to and they don't have to be made to. And number three, you're going to have to expose your technicians to training in a way that they can understand because you've got the additional issue, which is the difference in the generational styles and the way we speak and the way we feel about things. And to me, this is where the future will be and you'll be successful. And if you can't make these changes, the pain may be severe one day. It just might be severe. It's not all about dollars and cents. And when I talk about being successful, success to me is when you build the business that you want, not building the business that anyone else says you need. The goal should be to build the business that you want. I've worked with too many people that have built a business that they don't want that thing anymore. They don't want that 30 employees. They're done. They have had it. So that's what you got to do. So I'm going to encourage you. Stop now. And I want you to spend a few moments and stare at a blank wall. And on this blank wall, I want you to form this picture. And what this picture is a photo of your business 3 years from today. What do you want this business to be doing? And most importantly, what do you want this business to be giving you? Because your business exists for one reason and one reason only, and that is to bring you the things in life that you want. So, Tom, before we end this thing, is there anything you want to add to this with the words from the wise over there?
Words otherwise. I guess to reiterate that, it was something that I learned that listening to Bob Ferrari one time, where he was asked at one time by a coach to basically write down his perfect day, and it kind of comes in that same category. Basically go through each one of the steps of things that you would believe would be your perfect day here on Earth, and be the same way with your business. I think a lot of it has to come down to asking yourself, when is when, and when is a need to grow, and a time to just basically collect your stones and time to scatter them. And all those things all kind of come to place. But I think that's the big question, Jerry. That education will come to people if they're in a sense of understanding themselves and what they really want to accomplish for their people. There's always going to be the need for more work. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. It's just what you can do and the way you can do it in a way that creates a culture that everybody can live with.
That's it, brother. Well, man, I appreciate you joining me today. I'm so glad you take time out of your busy schedule. And hey, we'll do this again sometime. That work for you?
Sounds like a plan, Jerry.
Okay, brother. Well, Tom, I appreciate today. And this is Jerry Eisenhower here with the Chimney and Fireplace Success Network. This is sponsored every week by CBC Coaching. Check us out on the web, cbccoaching.com, and also look at our new Base Camp virtual learning platform. This is a phenomenal way for you to get training to your people 24/7 on demand, viewable on any device with internet connection. And with that, we're out of here, and we'll look forward to talking to you next time here on the Chimney and Fireplace Success Network.
Thanks for joining us here each week at the Chimney and Fireplace Success Network, sponsored by CVC Coaching, providing you the coaching and educational outreach services you need to move to your dream destination in business and in life.